Hello, my esports brethren. Richard Lewis here. Been on the road quite a bit lately and had loads of stuff going on, personally, professionally, everything else. Combined with the way the Patreon's gone and we're having to set up new shows and stuff. And thanks to everybody that supported that, by the way. It's been hard to sort of sit down, do a video like this where I'm just kind of talking to camera and collecting some thoughts or whatever. Anyway, I want to do a video just basically about my thoughts about ESL One Cologne. I don't know when I'm going to have released this. Hopefully it's still relevant at the time it comes out. I did a bunch of interviews while I was out there as well, and I'm going to try and drip feed those, as well as the documentary for the latest Trash Talk, which may or may not have been out by now. So, where to start? Well, let's begin by just saying, personally, how I felt visiting the event, and that was I went out there, and me and Thorin had joked on By the Numbers that the show was going to basically, the event, sorry, was going to maybe rekindle my passion. That was like our running gag, right? So I was like, no, because I mean, just lately, I think it's abundantly clear, I'm about, kind of close to done with the whole business, and haven't really been enjoying it lately. And if it wasn't for doing the shows and doing the stuff that people are supporting through Patreon, I probably would have already quit. But anyway, I went out there, and I wasn't really expecting to get recognized. I go to events all the time, and generally, nobody comes up to me. All right, sometimes they do, but I mean, compared to like players or whatever, it just doesn't really happen. And that works for me, right? Like, I don't crave the attention or anything. But I got to Cologne, and day one, when we were in the arena, I was just fucking taken aback by how many people were coming up to me. Hey, Richard, love your shows, love this, love that. People asking for photographs and autographs, and I was like, really sort of humbled by it all, because as I've always said, I don't think of myself as a fucking celebrity or whatever. I'm just some overweight, drunk asshole who happens to have been involved in esports for a long time. That's it, really. I mean, there's not really a lot more to it. But yeah, I was really fucking taken aback, and it meant a lot because it came at a time when, I'm thinking about, basically transitioning away and making some serious changes. And when you see that your work's appreciated, it's very validating. It's a good feeling. So thanks to all the people that did that. I'm not like other people in the sense that I think probably is when you're a player, by the time you've done your 500th autograph of the day, you're thinking, fucking hell, this is a drag. I don't mind. Like, I'll do 500 if there's 500 people who even know who the fuck I am. That's great, right? So we're super happy about that. So that's the personal stuff. Just in terms of how the event actually looked, I mean, this arena was great. There's just no doubt about it. It was packed to the rafters. All the tickets were fucking sold out apparently, and it just looked hugely impressive. I've been going to esports for a long time. If you dig up the old CAD Clips channel, you can see some of the videos. I went to the Dream Arena in Jönköping when that was full, and I was like, wow, this is impressive. I've been to ESWCs when they were full, like, wow, this was impressive. I've been to Assembly Summer, which had, and Winter, I think, which had its CSS and all its competitions kind of in a hockey stadium. And I was like, wow, that's impressive. And this was something else. I mean, there's no two ways about it. This was just ridiculously impressive. To put it in context, like I can't think of a time I've seen been in a crowd like that in Europe. That's beyond anything I've ever experienced, and the atmosphere was just ridiculously good. All the fans were in the right sort of frame of mind. We weren't partitioning fans away from each other, so rival fans playing each other were in amongst each other. It was a really good atmosphere. There was no trouble. ESL can definitely feel proud about the way that the stadium looked, and all of the mainstream press I was talking to, because I got to hang out in the press room, because ESL were kind enough to give me a press pass, even though I was just filming stuff for Trash Talk and whatnot. they were like, wow. There was a few journalists that asked me, "Is esports always like this?" I'm like, nah, nah, it ain't. And I did a bunch of events, that just sucked ass, right? So if you go back to 2006, 2007, I was doing tiny little source events, and the crowd that we had there was maybe 50 people, 100 for a big event. Sat on chairs that were just brought out in a communal area for the most part. In the group stage games, people just stood behind the players, usually other players that weren't playing games or people that knew the players personally. Now it's a genuine spectator sport, and we're getting genuine spectators and genuine fans, people who identify with brands, identify with players. It's really exciting, and there's no doubt, I would say, just in terms of how the stadium looked and the way the stage looked, I think ESL raised the bar, actually. I don't want to necessarily put myself out of a job, because obviously I work with DreamHack, and I work with Gfinity as well quite regularly. They hire me as a freelancer to do their hosting. But I thought, just in terms of how the stage looked, it was beyond anything I've probably seen in esports. DreamHack does a pretty impressive kind of setup on their stages, and the way they do the intro music and everything. When you're going to get nerd chills the first time you see that. But Gfinity as well, there's lots to like. They got the soundproof booths, and they make that work. And because it's an intimate atmosphere, because it's in a cinema, the booth thing doesn't actually, you don't lose that connection with the players. But this was just in terms of size and spectacle, like nothing else. Though. I mean, ESL can give themselves a big pat on the back for how the stage was handled. So I won't even harp on about any of the bad stuff until the end. There's a lot of good stuff. Things that I really liked about ESL, like organizationally, it was really well done. Now, we know we had those 2-hour delays, right? And I'll be honest, I did have a little sort of chuckle at myself. I made the point, actually, because I did see some of the ESL staff, and I think there's a misconception that ESL and me, we don't get along. On the record now, that's not true. I got friends, people I really, really care about who work for that company, people I've had great relationships with, and even people I don't have great relationships with, but I respect for everything they've done in the business. And I think they feel the same way about me, like I'm an asshole, but they see me as a necessary asshole. So we get along, ultimately. We find a way to make it work professionally. The only reason I'm so critical of ESL a lot of the time is they're industry leaders. And if you're an industry leader, then you gotta be perfect, right? You're the pioneers. You're the people that gotta you set the standard, right? So that's why I rag on ESL so much. It's not because I dislike ESL or hate ESL. I'm not just saying that so I can get into a major, because if that was true, I would have just took the offer of this one and said, "See you, Thorin." But that's not me. But anyway, I jokingly made the point about it when they had the problem with the sound. I was like, if only you had some guys that could fill in a really entertaining way. But the point is, actually, they dealt with that sound issue like that. I mean, considering they had to completely redo the sound thing, a 2-hour delay wasn't all that bad. So that was really well done by them as well. In terms of just the desk they put together, I mean, look, this probably isn't the smartest thing to say either, but I'll just be honest. I was super. They took risks, and for me, the risks they took weren't risks. I wouldn't consider them a risk. Like saying a guy like Moses, who's just like one of the most on-point analysts, like the real, for me, shining star in the NA scene. To call him a risk because it's he's inexperienced or whatever is ridiculous. This is a guy who has proven that he's apolitical in the sense that he won't take sides when politics are being bandied around. He's just not really interested in that. All he's interested in is having the opportunities and getting to do the best work he can. He can fit in with any group of casters, as demonstrated. He can prove that he's one of the best technical analysts that isn't sort of a player currently out there. And everything, I thought he handled himself excellently. If there was ever any doubt that he's good enough for the majors, proved at this event. In terms of hosting, this is probably where it gets stupid, and I made a point of saying this to him at the after party. I thought Chobra was great, and if I'm being honest, Chobra has a level of polish I'll never have. that I'm not really interested in having, actually. Um, I don't want to be a slick willy in a suit and tie done all the way up, and that's just not me, man. I want to be more like the old school kind of host, where it's about conversation, banter, free flowing. Whatever happens, happens. I just see myself as basically directing traffic and trying to make some order out of the chaos, with the principal thought in my mind actually being entertainment. I mean, that's how I approach a desk. And Chobra he's good. He'll be good enough, if he isn't already, to be when we start getting on ESPN, when we start getting syndicated onto TV channels. Chobra's the guy you'd go to, not me. That's just the truth. So, and there's other hosts as well. I mean, it's got to be said. I mean, I've never seen myself as a premier level host. I still don't understand why I get picked up as much as I do. I'm grateful for it. I'll accept the work while it's there. But I look, I'm under no illusions. I'm not going to be doing that for much longer. The real hosts are here, and they're gonna take over, and good for them. So I thought Chobra did a great job, and I talked to him at the after party, and Chobra said he had a great time doing a desk. That actually a CS desk is a lot more fun than a Dota desk, and a lot more banter, and the guys were really easy to bond with backstage, and I think that's a good sign, that he's been welcomed into it. And it's incredible, really, because he was never meant to be sort of doing the desk. So ultimately, understand this, he's been hired by ESL from a creative standpoint, and obviously to focus on the Dota, but to be involved in creative decisions elsewhere in the business. He wasn't ever expecting to be doing any CSGO events. It's only other issues with like, the me not wanting to work without Duncan and a few other things, I think, that have really made it. So they've had to put him front and center, and he's risen to that occasion. Obviously, as well, Henry, my boy, I'm pretty sure people thought he was a risk. He was saying to me before he went out to the major, long ago, he's like, I can't do this. I can't do a major. I'm not ready. And I was like, fuck, dude, of course you're ready. Like, what the fuck? Like, just talk. Everyone loves you anyway. And he was really sort of not wanting to do it. And I was like, look, trust me, if you don't do this, you'll regret it. You're stifling your own brand. You're stifling your own opportunities. You're totally ready for it. Just get out there and go do your thing. I gave him a bit of the old Shia LaBeouf, and bada bing, bada boom. And all right, he dressed like a fucking geography teacher, but fair play to him. I thought he knocked it out of the park. Everybody did. A lot of people were really critical and saying, oh, there wasn't the level of banter there, and look, banter's not everything, man. Like, I like it. That's my preference. I want CS:GO to have that little bit of edge to it. But if ESL don't want that, then it's their prerogative. So I think equally, as people get more and more comfortable with each other, and Chobra gets settled, and the team are being regularly utilized, then that's great. Also, just want to say, all the pansy hate's boring as fuck now, guys. We got to be better than that, right? Like, if you don't like her, fine. But you probably don't like every caster. I don't get why. I've been wanting to do a video about this for a long period of time. It's actually a separate thing, but just briefly, this binary thinking where someone's either the best or the worst, or someone's either good or bad. We've got to be smarter than that moving forward, right? We've got to be more discerning. Sure, maybe you put Pansy in the middle of the list, right? But this idea that she doesn't deserve to play a trade, I know how hard she works. I was there at the beginning, giving her introductions to players and stuff. I know how much work she puts in. She's probably, without wanting to just sound like I'm white knighting, probably one of the hardest working casters. I mean, seriously. Because she knows, like, first of all, coming from a rival game, Call of Duty, never a good foothold for CSGO. You're a girl, right? I mean, look, I'm not saying any of you guys that watch my channel are going to get hung up on that fucking bullshit. But there are some people that are just, she only gets a job because she's a girl, who's she fucking, blah, blah. It's pathetic. Like, so, just, I think she did it. I think every event she does, she improves. And on a long enough time scale, that's going to make her top tier, right? Because eventually people will plateau off, and she definitely deserves her chance at these ESL events. I don't think it's just a case of she's ESL staff. I think she stands up on her own merit. On the downside, on the negatives, I think some casters were criminally underused. Um, I say this all the time. I don't know what it is about Semler and ESL events, but Semler shits on, with all due respect, a lot of the casters they've got in their stable. And ESL need to be savvy about that fact and not let the idea that they need to promote their staff get in the way of what works. And what works is Anders and Semler together. And Semler's got every right to be at these events. His transition from when he was like in the good studio to being a top tier caster is fucking unreal. I urge anybody to go back and watch some of the videos that he did way back in the day before he'd really settled on CSGO and discovered his passion, hit his stride. This is a fucking model professional. This is a guy who is just literally a top tier caster. I don't give a fuck what anyone says about his in-game knowledge or any of that bullshit, which is 99% bullshit anyway, what people come out with, like, oh, he doesn't know about the game. He watches more fucking games than you, like, he must do. Or what, he doesn't have a brain? Like, of course he does. So, this ESL thing and Semler, like, that needs to be put to bed. Again, we're all better than that, right? Best man for the job, yeah? That's how it should be. Meritocracy. I understand ESL have an obligation to use their staff and they need to, like, bring them up and ease them in, but you don't just cut a top tier caster out to do that. You've got to find a consensus. You've got to find a way to make it work. So, all in all, I thought the desk was great. I don't think it suffered too much from the absentees. As I've said, I think Duncan should be doing the majors. I think Thorin should be at every event. If you're a serious event, you want to have the best level of analysis and history rolled into one there. I think Duncan's the guy for that. I still think he's the best all-round analyst. Yes, he's divisive, but this is a guy who has earned his stripes and should be at the majors. So these are small criticisms, and criticisms we probably saw coming a mile off. All in all, great desk. Thought it panned out really well. The crowd was super happy. Talking about the crowd, one of the things ESL did this event, fucking brilliant. Premium tickets, €220. You get front row seats, which I was sat in. I don't know why, but I was just, hey, just sit here. And you get 3 meals a day and infinite beer, like just as many beers as you can drink. And that made for a great atmosphere. I know in America, for example, maybe that kind of deal won't play because Americans tend to drink like frat boys, just my experience. Sorry if it's an uncomfortable stereotype, but generally Americans like to drink, they like to blitz it, right? They're doing shots before they've even left the fucking house to go out for the night. But every fan I talked to was drunk, super happy. Even like the NIP fans we were sat with when they lost, they still were having a great time. They still turned out for other games. And that's just that's a really cool deal, actually. Because if you think about it, if you're there for a weekend, right, you're probably thinking, €220 is a lot. But actually, for a premium level sporting event where you get food and like literally as much beer as you can drink, that's a fucking amazing deal. That's like literally, trust me. I mean, maybe it's me because I can drink obviously a fuck ton, but I think the average guy who does drink, or the average gal, that's a fucking awesome deal. And it was good to see everyone was really, really happy with that. What else? Oh yeah, the ESL also did this, which was really smart. Having the player signings. First of all, not a lot of events actually do official signings, which seems really stupid in a way. I don't know if it's more of an expo thing, and that's why it hasn't transitioned into esports events, but it should be. Players want to interact with their fans, but in a structured and controlled environment. Fans want to interact with the players. Let's have signings. Let's have official signings. It all makes sense. You see these things primarily for YouTubers. You don't really see them for esports personalities or players, and we should. Now, what ESL did was they block booked the signings over the course of the weekend, including teams that were already out the tournament. They came back and obligated their signings. They met their obligations to do the signings. And they were announced over the PA. So it was literally, if you were in the crowd, and it was like, okay, and they did it between games, which again, really clever, so it'd be like, Cloud9 are now doing a sign-in in the lobby. And all you would need to do is just come out and the signings would be like pretty much right there. So that was like really smart. You know, it was good for the fans, really really good, and everybody got what they wanted. You know, um, I thought overall, uh, it was just really well organized. From a press perspective, I mean, this is like probably not going to concern the average viewer. ESL were really good on that front as well. They had multiple liaisons that you could go to. So if I wanted to do an interview with somebody, they would walk, and it was quite a distance. They would walk to the player lounge, ask the players if they wanted to do the interview, bring them to you. They handled everything, and they were doing it all by mobile phone. You got given their mobile numbers when you went into the venue. It was on your little press pass. So that was all really, really smart. Now, look, things that can improve for next time, and these are just a few minor gripes. Look, again, I'm not going to get into the format because there's not really a lot we can do. I mean, I think me and Thorin kind of disagree a little bit on this, but ESL can't push back against Valve too much. You can't really do that. Valve insist on doing it this way. They've got their own ideas. They've got their own reasons. They think this is what works. And of course, I think the bulk of the community and purists like myself, we don't agree with that. That doesn't mean necessarily that our view's right. I've never heard the official explanations from Valve. I'd like to. But ultimately, I still think this is way too random for a world championship, effectively. It just doesn't really make a lot of sense to me why we have these best of one groups and random maps and just, all this RNG, which can completely hamstring a top tier team who would under any of the circumstances have a good chance of like winning the event. And we got lucky this event, I think, in terms of we ended up with the best four teams in the semis. But again, we did that despite the format, not because of it. And had a big team gone out in some ridiculous fashion, I think the community would have been rightfully outraged. But it didn't happen. I'd like ESL to maybe be cognizant of the fact that we all know what a better, or a theoretically better format is. And if ESL's got all this money from MTG at the point where they can say, hey, we can put up our own $250,000 for our own tournaments now, and they can pump $500,000 into the ESL, ESEA Pro League, maybe you do a major that isn't officially a major, maybe that's what we need, so we can see how the better format would play out, and maybe that proof of concept will show Valve that actually that way is better, and maybe they adopt it. I'd like to see that. What else? Because there were a few things. There was definitely some security concerns, I think, which ESL will probably want to be mindful of. So, first thing is, when Fnatic were brought out to do a press conference, they had to walk past a lot of fans. And some fans were booing and being a bit weird. And, I'm not saying there's any true malicious person out there in CSGO, but if there was, it's quite conceivable those players could have been confronted or interacted with, and there wouldn't have been a lot that could have been done to stop it. Equally, players coming from the player lounge to the press area, or the player lounge to get something to eat or use other facilities, it was very hard for them to just take that 5-minute walk. It was carnage. Every time a player came down from the player areas, they would having to sign autographs, do selfies, everything else. There didn't seem to be any runners, people running for the players to get food, which again, that'd be ideal. But equally, again, if a player wants to just stretch their legs and walk around, probably not a bad idea, to have them escorted or something. I know it sounds extreme, and I know people will laugh about it, but the reality is, I don't think anybody can conceive of what it's like to be put in a situation where you're like surrounded by people and everyone professes to be a fan, and you feel obliged to give them your time, but that same group of people around you, all it takes is maybe one guy to be like pissed off because you beat their team or something, and that situation can get weird. And we're still talking about young adults, and a lot of young adults don't have the best conflict resolution skills. On top of that, Perhaps some people aren't the best equipped to defend themselves. So there's plenty of things to be thoughtful about there, and I'd say overall ESL can do a better job on security. I'm pretty sure they know that. I'm pretty sure the players will have fed that back to them, and yeah, that's how I think about it. I'm just trying to add some other stuff. Oh yeah, in terms of the broadcasts, it's got to be said that when you have downtime, I understand you've got stuff to do, but I'm sick and tired now of esports having these screens saying we'll be live in 10 minutes, and you watch the countdown, and then it gets to 0, and then it just goes back to 10 minutes again because there's been a delay, or someone's not ready, or it should never have been 10 minutes to begin with. I think if you hire talent, put them on camera. You know, look, let's use an example. BBC broadcast, right? If for whatever reason there was a delay in a football match, they don't say, okay, well, we've done our 15 minutes at the start, like Gary Lineker and, that lot, right? Depressingly Alan Shearer sometimes. His punditry career really will make even the hardest Newcastle fan fall out of love with him. But anyway, so let's say you've got your little punditry team for match of the day or whatever. Game's about to start, right? Live match. They've done their 15 minutes. They don't just go, oh, well, there's been a delay due to a waterlogged pitch. We're not going to have kickoff for another half hour, so here's a blank screen to look at. See ya. They'd fill the time. They'd have somebody in the back room, digging up replays. They'd have topics they would discuss. This is where a good host comes in. You keep the conversation flowing. And I just think that the least amount of time that we have where we're staring at blank screens and listening to fucking dubstep, the better, right? That's how it should be. That's how a broadcast should be. So definitely, that's something that's not just an ESL thing. That's an entire esports thing. But all in all, I'm finding it very hard to think of anything to be really critical about. A lot of people complaining about the pin sales while I was there. I'm not really that bothered about that. It was, it's not a big deal. I think a lot of people complaining about the pin sales are basically the same people who will wanting to game the system and queue up and then queue up again and queue up again and queue up again and stick them all on eBay. So I didn't really see that. I thought it was pretty well handled ultimately, considering the sheer volume of demand for these items, and again for all the wrong reasons. I mean, if you want a little memento of a great esports event, fine. If you want to just fucking buy something and then flip it on eBay or even in the queue while you're re-queuing for another one for double what you paid for it, you're just using it to make profit. I don't really... Look, I'm not going to begrudge you doing that. By all fucking means, do it. Economics and market forces and all that. But in the grand scheme of things, that's not really what they're there for. I'm pretty sure Valve don't like the idea that they've created a black market economy for what's meant to be a commemorative badge. So, but look, in general, I really needed this event. I've been going to events for a long time. I've always been working. Never really had the time for myself. I've never really sat in a crowd and interacted with fans while we're watching a game. I've always been watching from a press room or a vantage point. Never really wandered around and sort of just taken in the atmosphere and enjoyed it. And I totally get now why CSGO has grown to the degree it has, and why we've got such a strong and bright future. And we have actually got a really cool community. I saw the worst of it recently. ESL Cologne was a chance to see the best of it, and I'm pretty stoked about that. I'm pretty happy that it exists. So all in all, I thought it was a great event. There's still things to work on. We're still not 100% perfect yet in esports terms, but overall, I think ESL can be proud of what they did. They brought some new things to the table. They raised the bar in terms of how the stage looked. They filled almost an incredible size stadium, made for an amazing spectacle. With a few more little tweaks here and there, you could probably go so far as to say that would be one of the best events that we've had in CS:GO. There's no accounting for the games. I'm pretty sure that isn't the final some people would have wanted. Maybe there was people out that were hoping for Virtus Pro. Well, it definitely was. But all in all, like I say, an amazing event. Anyway, sorry for rambling. You should be used to that by now, right? Anyway, thanks a lot for watching the video. You know what to do if you like listening to me ramble. You can like, comment, subscribe, all that stuff down below. And I'll see you on the next one. Thanks a lot for listening. Peace.